Samantha Sammis loves helping people, from doing nonprofits to opening a laundromat to teaching kids to now being a licensed therapist. I talk one-on-one with Samantha for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Samantha Sammis, welcome back to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Obviously, me and you actually spoke a couple of years ago for Quintin's Close-Ups when you were running the laundromat right down the street here on the east side of Charleston. And now, from my understanding, you are a licensed professional counsel associate, LPC-A, based here in South Carolina, and particularly in Charleston. Let me ask you this. Why Samantha Sammis? Why counseling?
So with my community work that I was doing downtown when we last spoke, I just by default encountered a whole lot of different people all the time, every day. And so through that work, I realized that I love people. I love connecting with people. I love speaking with people. I love engaging with people. And just kind of by default recognizing that there's a lot of stressors that impact people on a daily basis, specifically mental illness and our mental health. And it was never an interest for me before, really. And just through my community work, I was exposed to a lot more things that impact our mental health, that harm our mental health. And while I was doing my work downtown, I was actually engaged in a master's program at the Citadel for my degree in psychology in order to become a clinical counselor. And so after my community work ended, the timing was actually really great. And I got a job immediately afterwards at the Charleston Mental Health Center, where I've been ever since. And now I'm kind of doing some private practice things on my own as well.
Now, you talked earlier about those stressors. What are the big major stressors when it comes to mental health right now?
So right now, I think we're all seeing a lot of the same stressors. The COVID-19 pandemic, for sure, that is just impacting families and marriages and child rearing in all kinds of ways that we could have never guessed this time last year. Financial strain, jobs, balancing virtual learning with kids,
Right.
All kinds of things, especially as the holidays come up. Holidays are typically stressful for people anyway, even without a pandemic. And now folks are having to navigate, do we gather? Do we not gather? What does this look like? All of this in combination with kind of the pre and post election swirl has been really, really hard for a lot of people.
And let me ask you this. What is actually harmful to mental health right now?
Mental health right now, I think it's juggling all of those things at once. I'm having a lot of conversations with folks about our fight or flight response. So when we encounter any type of threat, a threat to our physical health, like a virus, threat to our economic health, like a job loss, threat to our social health, like having to stay isolated, any kind of threat, our bodies and our minds are going to react in one of these ways. Fight, flight, appease, and freeze are kind of some two extra ones that are added there. And so a lot of folks are kind of stuck in this fight, flight, freeze, appease mode. As there's a lot of hypervigilance, a lot of this sense of being on guard all the time. And it's impacting our bodies physically. It's impacting us mentally, emotionally, our sleep, the way we're eating, all kinds of things. So that's what I'm seeing right now.
And what's the process of really unstucking yourself, for lack of a better word, from that particular mode of the freeze and all of these other things?
Yeah, so it's identifying what the threat is first. It's identifying what your triggers are. Okay, if I feel threatened in this way, do I run away? Do I avoid? Do I distract? Do I drink a lot? Do I eat a lot? Do I shut down? Recognizing what those triggers are and what your current reaction is, and realizing that it's not working. Or maybe it is, but it's not working the way you want it to. And so for most folks, we're recognizing, okay, when my body is reacting in this way, my heart is pumping really hard. Maybe my spouse is yelling at me, or my kid can't get on that Zoom call. I'm getting freaked out and I want to react in this way, but let's do some deep breathing instead. Let me step back a minute and identify what the stressor is and what's a better way to resolve it. And a lot of folks are recognizing right now that being present is the most powerful, being mindful, recognizing that there's not a whole lot we can do to plan for next week, for tomorrow. And so practicing gratitude, practicing the things we're thankful for right now, practicing just identifying the things we can control right now, which are just a few things, and that's okay.
And what are those hidden identities, Samantha?
What do you mean?
a lot of people will need to identify a lot of the things that you just mentioned. What are those things that they normally don't identify that are right there?
Yeah. So I think people aren't able to identify just the new normal that we're in right now is really stressful. It's really unpredictable. And I think folks maybe don't give themselves enough credit for juggling those things. So some folks might say, "Oh, well, I'm staying home, work from home. I shouldn't be stressed." And so I have to tease those things out. Well, like it makes sense that you're stressed because you're not just working from home, you're also managing your kids on their virtual learning. You're also managing upcoming holiday plans. You're also staring at a screen all day when you wouldn't normally do so.
Right.
There's a lot of extra stressors that are internal and subconscious that we don't always realize right away.
And you also said this too on your website. You said this too. It was due this work, obviously meaning the East Side, that I learned my passion for social justice, community development, and utilizing the integration of psychology and theology to empower individuals towards emotional and obviously spiritual healing. Let me ask you this: with the integration of obviously psychology and theology, how many people have reached their emotional and spiritual healing?
Oh, I think we're always working toward it. I don't know that we'll ever achieve it or reach it, but my goal is to bring people to a place where they're constantly adapting and they're excited about it. So they're not stuck and they're also not living in the past, but we're in the present. We're constantly adapting. We're constantly growing, and there's a hope in that. There's an excitement in that, as opposed to maybe a dread or an overwhelming sense.
And what are those upper senses?
So I think people are afraid of therapy because we're going to kind of dig up some of these things that they don't want to talk about,
Right.
when actually those are the things that are getting you stuck. So maybe we're digging up things that you haven't talked about and you've avoided for 12 years. Well, those things you've avoided for 12 years, they're living in your body some way. They're living in your mind in some way. You're doing things you wouldn't normally do if we reached that healing. And so I think that's scary for a lot of people. So digging that stuff up, being okay with growth, being okay with change is really what we're going for.
And you also said this too. I believe that therapy is a form of storytelling. Does oral, visual, digital, or written storytelling help with that therapy?
Yes, it does so much. I love doing this with clients where we actually write down really detailed parts of their story and we do it over and over again. It's a type of trauma therapy. It can be used for other things too, but the act of writing out your story and then the visualization of seeing it and then also verbalizing out loud. Oh, so much stuff comes up. So much healing can happen from that. It's really, really powerful to write your story, to see it, and to say it out loud.
And when you come up with those things, I mean, obviously you hear that from those people's stories. What have you learned more as a therapist?
Oh, that I'm not a brick wall, right? I've got emotions too, and so I think in school we're taught to be kind of these stoic sounding boards, and that's just impossible. I'm a human, and I express that when it comes up, and I think it helps my clients too to know that I'm not a robot. And I've cried in therapy, I've gotten angry in therapy as the therapist, and so I have to recognize those emotions in myself too, and thanking that person, honoring them for what a privilege it is for me to hear that part of your story.
And you also said this too on your website, quote, each of our stories has fits and starts, broken pieces, loose ends, dead ends, and jumbled parts. Some of our stories have more brokenness and questions than others. Is there a story so far that has had the fits and starts and broken pieces and loose ends and dead ends and jumbled parts, but also have like a desired effect?
Has a desired what?
Effect. Oh, can you hear me?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that last part.
Yeah, but most of those stories, do they have like a desired effect?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
okay.
So the reason we stay in kind of the jumbled parts of our story is because it's comfortable. The chaos we know is the chaos we're comfortable with. The fear we know is the fear we're comfortable with. The pain we know is the pain we're comfortable with. So someone might be living a really chaotic, jumbled up story, but they don't want to leave it because that's what they're comfortable with. That's all they've known. And so I try to honor that too and say, this has worked for you because you've needed it to work for you. This has worked for you because it's the way you've been surviving. Well, let's venture out of this chaos together and see how much more you could be thriving instead of just kind of in survival mode.
Yes, and you also said this too. As a therapist, it is my job to help you understand, discover, and define your story. But before becoming a therapist, who was able to understand, discover, and define your story?
Oh, my own therapist. Every good therapist has a therapist. So if your therapist doesn't have one, you might need a new therapist. Yeah, I if I'm going to promote mental health and wellness and therapy, I got to be doing it myself. So I have definitely been doing it myself.
And what have you learned more about yourself being a therapist now that you didn't know before?
Oh goodness, so many things. I think anyone in the helping profession is naturally also a fixer, and that can be really harmful. It's not my job to fix anyone. I can't fix anyone. I can't save anyone. I can't make anyone do anything they don't want
Right.
to do. And so simply listening, simply being with that person in that space, and I might have a goal for them in mind, but that's not their goal for themselves at all. They want to go over here, and that's okay. So I'm going to go there with them. So learning that I'm not a fixer. I'm a listener. I'm a storyteller. I'm a facilitator, and that makes me a better therapist.
How do you facilitate that space?
Safety, freedom. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in 1 or 2 sessions. It may not even happen after a year or so. There are clients I've seen for a number of years, and we're only just now getting to really deep rooted parts of their story. So it's creating safety, it's creating consistency, it's letting people disagree with me. It's me showing my own emotion too, so that the client knows I'm human and I'm not, I'm not a superhuman. I'm not a robot.
Yeah.
That creates safety. It creates comfort.
Comfort. And you also said this too on the website. Our stories create narratives and paradigms that we chose to live by as truth, but not all stories tell the truth. Some stories tell lies, distorted truths, and suppress what's true altogether. I want to untangle your story with you, help you find the truths and life's pieces, and gift it back to you in a way that you give the freedom to live your most authentic life with vulnerability, courage, and confidence. What are those life pieces when the truth is actually told in these stories?
Oh, so much. I think especially with trauma, that which I do a lot of trauma therapy. People who experience trauma believe a lie about themselves, that it was my fault, or I should have done something different, or it was my responsibility. That's a lie. That's a lie that we believe. That's a really harmful narrative and paradigm, especially trauma that happens as a child. We believe lies that I should have done something. It was my fault. I'm responsible. And so through therapy, we're able to reframe that narrative and reframe that thought about yourself and go back to that child and say, you were doing everything you could with the resources you had. You were not meant to be the adult. The adult was supposed to be the adult, and they weren't being the adult. And so reframing those narratives, reframing those lies that we believe about ourselves, and that seeing the freedom that comes from that is so incredible. It's really powerful.
And when you reframe these narratives and these stories, how does that actually change the actual person?
Oh, so much, because they've been living in that lie for weeks, months, years, decades. The lie that something was your fault, 30 years ago, and then coming to the realization that it wasn't your fault. That's not your responsibility. That's not your burden to take on. Again, is so freeing. People's mental health it is changed forever. Their physical health, like I said, our body stores that stress in our nervous system, in our vagus nerve, in our gut. Our body stores that, and we get sick. We get physically sick from some of these things. So seeing physical healing from people because they've ventured into this mental health journey is really, really powerful.
And you also said this too. In my client-centered approach to therapy, we can explore various treatment methods to restore the truth of your story in order that you may powerfully move towards emotional and spiritual healing. What methods describes you best as a therapist?
So that client-centered approach. So it's letting the client decide where they want to go and when they want to go there. I have a list of modalities that I have on my website, kind of the treatment methods that I'm trained in, that I practice. But at the end of the day, the client chooses. The client chooses, where they want to go that day. And if we're doing a certain thing in therapy that they're resistant to or they're refusing to, like, okay, let's step back, let's reassess. Well, what is it that we actually want to work on? What is it that you actually want to work on? So the client is in charge. It's their treatment. It's their healing. I may push and I may challenge, but I'm not the fixer. So.
And what do you push and challenge to get that reassess?
That I challenge a lot of those beliefs, those negative beliefs, those negative distortions we have about ourselves. So I'll just question that. It was your fault as a 5-year-old. You had that responsibility as a 5-year-old. You're taking that on. Tell me more about that. And we just kind of tease out some of the lies that the person is believing about themselves. And so I just challenge through open-ended questions and see what comes up.
And what method actually restores the truth in people's story?
Oh, that's all them. I could do all the trained therapy, all the modalities I want to do, but the client has to go there and the client has to believe it and the client has to trust the process and know that it works.
And you also said this, well, actually, Dr. Brennan Brown said this too, quote, the irony is that we attempt to disown our difficult stories to appear more whole or more acceptable. But our wholeness actually depends on the integration of all of our experiences, including the falls. What difficult stories in your life that you have been able to attempted to disown as far as to appear more whole or acceptable?
Sure. So I'm a chronic perfectionist. So that's my I want to seem like I've got it all together. I want to seem perfect. I want to seem, this certain type of way. And that's so harmful. And it's just not real. It's not real life. It's not authentic. Nobody's perfect. And so by me owning the parts of me that are not perfect, owning the parts of me that are a little bit controlling, owning the parts of me that are a little bit scared of failure and scared of rejection and scared of loneliness, just admitting my own faults, my own fears, makes me more human, and it creates more authentic relationship and more authentic healing.
And what type of authentic relationships have you been able to really form since you became a therapist?
So with clients, it's so hard. It's such a bizarre relationship because it's one-sided. I'm hearing parts of someone's story that maybe they've never shared with anyone else in their life. And I'm a total stranger. They're not hearing anything about me. They're not hearing parts of my story. So it's super one-sided. That's what makes therapy really unique and odd in some ways, which I think is important to show kind of glimpses of your humanness as a therapist at different times. So yeah, it's a weird relationship. It's not something that most people encounter every day, but through my therapy with clients, it helps me be a better friend. It helps me be a better neighbor, a better daughter, a better sister. It helps me be better in the relationships that I do have outside of that therapy.
And you also said this too on the website, quote, I'm trained in EMDR, CPT, DBT modalities, that is, and offer Christian counseling upon request, regardless of your religion, sex, gender, race, ethnicity, ability, or other orientation. I am dedicated to providing therapeutic service based on your goals and personal strengths so that you may be empowered, that you can also live your most authentic life with vulnerability and courage. How are you reaching your personal strengths and goals through vulnerability and courage?
How am I reaching my personal goals?
Yes, ma'am.
I think through starting this private practice, that takes a lot of vulnerability and a lot of courage. I don't know what's going to happen. At some point, I'm going to have to quit my day job, and trust that it works and trust that, I can sustain myself. So yeah, I have to believe in what I'm doing, and that takes courage, and I have to put myself out there, which takes vulnerability. So that's, I think, what I'm doing right now.
right now? And what do you hope to be sitting down talking with somebody next in the next 6 months?
What do I have to be doing in the next 6 months?
What do you hope to sit down and talk to people about in the next 6 months? You just mentioned the election
Oh,
and the
goodness.
holidays. What do you hope to sit down and talk to with the next person about?
Yeah, in the next 6 months, goodness. I don't know. I'm really curious to see specifically, just how where we're all going to be emotionally in 6 months. The world in our city is so different and constantly changing, and I'm just curious what's going to be happening. I'm interested in having these conversations. I'm interested in hearing how people are continuing to change and evolve. I hope to just be talking with people in 6 months about their continued adaptability, their continued growth, and kind of see where we are.
And I know also on the website you said, I have lived in Charleston for over 12 years and have a diverse background working with various social services. What is the biggest difference about Charleston when you think of social services 12 years ago to right now?
Say that last question again.
Yeah, what's the biggest difference about social services in Charleston from 12 years ago to right now?
Oh goodness. So 12 years ago, I don't think I was as informed of the social services as I am now. I think there's something new, all the time. There's new grassroots organizations popping up. There's new people doing boots on the ground work that are not a nonprofit, that are just citizens wanting to do good things.
Yes.
I think we're seeing more of that now in the pandemic, as neighbors are collaborating and communities are engaging more with each other. I'm seeing more community. I'm seeing more growth. There's way more nonprofits than there were 12 years ago. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's bad. Where sometimes it feels like we're competing against each other. Other times it's, people coming up with new ideas that haven't been done before. So there's a lot more creativity. There's a lot more people doing good things, I think. So that's encouraging.
And what are those new ideas are you hearing on that particular front as far as nonprofit?
I think just creativity, a lot of collaboration. So yeah, I think I just saw the East Side Community Development Corporation on Thanksgiving. They're doing a Thanksgiving dinner and a blood drive, just like a combination that you don't hear of all the time. And so folks, collaborating with each other and empowering each other, using their strengths with the strengths of another group to help each other. It's really cool to see.
And you mentioned this at the top of the interview, but you also said this on your website. Before becoming a therapist, I worked as the founder and director of a local nonprofit that focused on asset-based community development in the East Side neighborhood of the peninsula. How is the asset-based community development working out for the East Side right now?
From what I hear, it's going well. I haven't lived there in 2 years, which feels so long. And it's so funny. I mean, you being from Charleston know this, living in West Ashley compared to living downtown, it feels like you're across the country. I mean, It just feels like another world. So my finger is not quite on the pulse of the East Side as it used to be. But seeing things on social media and hearing things from friends that are still down there, it sounds like there's more collaboration, there's more working together, and that's asset based. That's you empower each other. And so from what I've been hearing, it's going well.
And this might be a silly question, but who do you want to collaborate with next when it comes to obviously therapy and psychology?
Oh, so many people. I see so many people, like I said, doing really creative things with holistic health and healing, using art therapy, using journal therapy. I focus on adults mainly. I would love to partner with someone who does stuff with kids. There's a lot of really cool therapists doing really creative things right now, group therapies. I would love to partner and collaborate with some of those initiatives that are happening.
And this might be a little personal, but what exactly are you writing down in your journal today?
Oh, goodness. I'm just taking it one day at a time. So I'm doing therapy. I'm teaching also. I'm keeping busy, and hopefully it'll keep working out. So
Yes, indeed. Well, Samantha Sammis, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups. And I'm so disappointed and so sorry about all of the technical difficulties here, but hopefully this will be a great interview for people to watch later.
yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Anytime.